Hi guys, so just laid Vince down for a nap, so I finally have a moment to talk to you guys about this. My son was diagnosed with hand, foot, and mouth disease, and for those that don't know what it is, it sounds disgusting. Like the name they gave it, disease, it's not at all the way it sounds. I mean, the hand, foot, and mouth thing is correct, but the disease, no. It's a lot like chickenpox. It's almost like a cousin of chickenpox. There's like actual things that look like chickenpox on his body. As a matter of fact, the doctor said it's really hard to differentiate between the two, but he knows that it's not chickenpox because he was vaccinated for chickenpox at 12 months, and then he'll be getting a booster when he's 4. So he has hand, foot, and mouth disease, and where I live, the Centers for Disease Control said on their website that in the area where I live, there's a lot of outbreaks. There's a lot of outbreaks all over the United States, but so this is what happened. I had no idea. It was really weird. He had this for probably like well over a week before we even knew that he had anything going on. So I'm going to start from the beginning, and I'll try not to make this too long. First of all, some of you already know that he had some episode that was going on where he was clutching his chest and his stomach. Well, as it turns out, it's all related to the hand, foot, and mouth disease. We have answers. This is crazy. So, yeah, it was like 2 weeks ago he started clutching his chest and screaming. The episodes, he went on with that for about 5 to 7 days. It didn't last over a week, and all of a sudden the episode stopped. One day, the worst day ever, he had like 8 episodes in one day. It was terrible. He was waking up out of a dead sleep. And then the last 2 or 3 days, he was only having like 1 episode a day. And then he just stopped. Well, then they had given him an EKG because he was clutching his chest. The EKG was normal. Then they thought maybe he's got silent reflux, so they gave him an upper GI. Well, the upper GI was normal. Right before the upper GI, they had prescribed him Prevacid. Well, the day after the upper GI, or the day of the upper GI maybe, he had, or maybe it was the day after, I forget the timeline, I should have wrote this down, but he had diarrhea. So, and I know that the barium that they make them ingest for the upper GI can cause could cause constipation, so it was kind of weird that he was getting diarrhea instead. So I learned that Prevacid could actually cause an upset stomach, so I assumed it was the Prevacid, and since the upper GI was normal, I called the doctor and said, hey, can I stop giving him this? And he said, yeah, that's fine. So we stopped the Prevacid, and the next day he had a really bad diaper rash. So we assumed, okay, he had diarrhea, he's now got a rash, it must have been very acidic. So we treated it. We started putting like Desitin or something similar to that on his behind, and then we would let him air out. We would let him run around for a while without a diaper on, sometimes with big boy underwear on. We just were taking care of it the way we were supposed to be taking care of it. Well, anyway, my husband's on vacation this whole week, last week, when all this was going on, and my daughter was on spring break, and we were going to visit in-laws a lot. We had family in from out of the country and out of different states and everything, so visiting family a lot, and my mother-in-law's a nurse, and she looked at it, and because every day it was starting to get worse and spreading all over his butt, and she's like, well, maybe it's yeast. I know yeast can spread a little bit. So I looked online at the pictures of yeast, and it all described, yeah, it can spread. And I looked up the pictures, and I'm like, yep, it looks like yeast. So later that night, it spread all the way down his leg to his feet, okay? I think on both legs, but one was worse than the other. And we're like, crap, and it was too late, it was even too late to take him to urgent care by the time we had noticed that it was all the way down to his feet. So the next morning, we woke up and the rash that had spread all the way down his leg was really bad. So we're like, okay, my doctor's really good about getting us in immediately. So I called the doctor, and they said, come in 2 hours. We're like, great. I was sick. I woke up that morning with the flu. I wasn't vomiting, but I had really bad stomach cramps, and I was just feeling like crap all over. My bones hurt. Everything hurt. So I was so sick, I couldn't get up. I lay down all day. So my husband took him to the doctor. Thank God he was home, because it would have been really hard to get myself up and out. I would have had to have, made him leave work or something. It was so bad. I was so sick. So he takes him to the doctor, but right before he left, we were Googling, and we're trying to figure out what it was. And we're like, okay, well, maybe rash, or yeast, but there's no way yeast would spread down the leg like that. So then I just Googled, like, rash spreading from diaper area down the leg, and I came up with hand, foot, and mouth disease. And I looked at the picture, and sure enough, it looked like that exactly. So then my husband was like, well, no, we can't jump to conclusions. It's probably not that. I had never even heard of this. So he takes him to the doctor, and he calls me on his way home, and he's like, you were right, it's hand, foot, and mouth disease. And we're like, that is crazy. Like, I started reading all about it, and yeah, like I said, it's like a virus. It has to run its course. There's nothing that they can give them to make it go away. Apparently, there's no vaccinations for it at the current moment, but they do have it for chickenpox, so I don't know why they can't come up with a vaccine for this. But there's a couple different kinds of hand, foot, and mouth disease that they can get. It's like the Coxsackie virus. I don't even know how to say it. But we figured out that the one he has is Coxsackie B. I don't even know if I'm saying this correctly. And the reason why we know that is because of the episodes of grabbing his chest. A complication of hand, foot, and mouth disease, there's several complications. One of them is viral meningitis. There's other complications as well. But the one that he had was called pleurodynia. It's either pleurodynia or pleurodynia. It's spelled Pleurodynia. And pleurodynia, whatever, this is what they say. It's a disease caused by the Coxsackie B virus and sometimes other viruses. And it is named Bornholm disease after, that's what the Danish call it, where earlier cases occurred, like back in the 1930s. The signs and symptoms. Symptoms may include fever and headache, and back at that time, there was like 2 days in a row where he had a temperature. One day it was like 101, and the next day it was like 99.5 or 100. Symptoms may include fever and headache, but the distinguishing characteristics of this disease is attacks of severe pain in the lower chest, often on one side. The slightest movement of the rib cage causes a sharp increase of pain, which makes it very difficult to breathe, and an attack is therefore quite a frightening experience, although it generally passes off before any actual harm occurs. The attacks are unpredictable and strike out of the blue with a feeling like an iron grip around the rib cage. Let's see here. Some people call it the devil's grip. So, I mean, hearing that that's what he was going through broke my heart. Like, I knew that he was in pain because he does not act like that. I mean, he can be a little bit dramatic sometimes, but he was like, if you could hear him crying and screaming, it was like someone was sawing off his leg or something. It was really terrible. And so just to know that, because some people were describing this as like very violent pain. And it just broke my heart to know that's what he was going through, and none of us had any idea what was going on. And I mean, but the good thing is we picked him up and we comforted him, and you know, we did everything that we could. So yeah, he's got hand, foot, and mouth disease. Now his rash is almost gone, and apparently the rash is only contagious. The incubation period is like 3 to 6 days, I believe, or 3 to 7 days. And you're only contagious in the first week that you have the symptoms. And see here, and it's probably been 2 weeks. It's been a while, and he was just diagnosed this past Thursday. So we've known for like 4 days now. So yeah, just crazy. So if you guys have any questions about it, let me know. If any of you have experienced this with your little one, let me know. My mom said I had some mystery thing like this happen when I was a kid one time, and they were like breaking out the medical books, and nobody could figure out what it was, and then it went away probably in about a week. So she thinks maybe I had it. Usually kids only under the age of 5 are the ones who get it. My daughter didn't even get it, and they even took a bath together a couple times. So they were very much, you know, drinking after one another, bathing after one another, and, you know, things like that. And she didn't get it. She's 6. So, I mean, it must really, I think it has to do with the immune system. By the time you're over the age of 5, your immune system is built up enough to not get this disease, or not the disease, but the virus. But adults very, very rarely get it. And if you've had, just like chickenpox, if you've had it once, you'll never get it again. So it's pretty much chickenpox, but just like a cousin of chickenpox, it comes from a different kind of virus. So, just crazy. And the name they gave it is terrible. Who wants to say my son has hand, foot, and mouth disease? You know, someone's going to be like, okay, you know. And my daughter was like, Vincey really has cooties, doesn't he? And I'm like, oh, man, that's just such an awful name, you know, to give this thing. So, yeah, he is on the mend. He hasn't had any more episodes, although he did grab his chest yesterday and say it hurts, but he didn't cry or scream. They did say that there can be some flare-ups of the pleurodynia, and then I think that's pretty much all I had to share. So I just wanted to tell you guys that. I was debating whether or not even telling you guys because, I don't know, but I thought this might be helpful because, you know, I had no clue what was going on with him. He had this rash and it spread down his leg, and I'm like, you know, this is a community of moms and dads, and I think things like this should be shared with one another. So, I hope this is helpful, and yeah, if you ever, oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention this, the first symptom is usually sores inside the mouth. Him being 2, he doesn't let us look in his mouth. It's hard enough to get in there and get a good brushing of his teeth, but the doctor found it with a flashlight, because, you know, it's kind of dark in the mouth, you can't really see that great. So he did have sores in his mouth, and he still does, but they're almost gone. So that was probably his first symptom, and we didn't know it. So the poor little guy, he hasn't been eating, he hasn't been sleeping well. They had us give him Benadryl at nighttime to help him sleep and with the inflammation and stuff, and then they had us put calamine lotion on the POC things, whatever they are, the hand, foot, and mouth things. So anyway, I will talk to you guys later. Let me know if you have questions. Bye.